Everything happens for a reason. I often hear people say that when attempting to cope with an unfortunate situation that has befallen them, and I used to agree with this sentiment. But through a series of recent events, I have come to the conclusion that, well, to be blunt, shit happens, and not everything can be explained, and not everything has a purpose, as was the case with the story you're about to hear. It was a Friday night, cold enough for us to be wearing sweaters, but not quite cold enough for us to warrant the use of hoodies. And the moon was full, sharing its light with anyone who might need it while traversing the desolate nighttime streets of York New City. It was this night that my friends and I were taking our weekly trip down to the gas station to procure supplies for our gaming night. And it was this night that something happened to me that I would never forget. "It's starting to get cold outside. I think we're gonna have to start driving soon," I spoke out, breaking the silence that had formed between us. "Yeah, we just left and my hands are already freezing," AJ responded. I wasn't sure if he was joking or complaining. I could never tell with him. "Yeah, plus, driving will get us home faster. We can spend more time gaming," Jesse added. Unlike AJ, Jesse was a beacon of positivity, always able to cheer you up and shed a positive light on any situation. We were on our way home. Our house dwelled on the top of a mountain on the outskirts of town, through a forest and past a cave. We were isolated, and it was paradise. Having made the journey countless times before, we confidently treaded through the forest and up the mountain trail. However, this night, something out of the ordinary would occur. You see, halfway up the mountain trail is a cave, an unexplored cave, with an entrance so massive that an average-sized house could be sheltered within. Despite this fact, it was impossible to see into, even during broad daylight. There was no hint of the cave revealing its secrets. Even shining flashlights into the entrance revealed nothing. It was as if some powerful wizard had come and cast a spell on it. And it was for this reason that it was unexplored, and for this reason that, when I saw two red lights juxtaposed against the ever-present dark background, that it caught my attention. Jesse and AJ were leading the walk, ahead of me by about 20 feet. Talking about something I had no interest in, so they hadn't even noticed when I stopped to look into the cave. And even though I was pretty sure I had seen something, when I turned my head to look, nothing was there. Caves had always made me uneasy. What happened next, though, would intensify my fear of caves immensely. There was something ringing inside my head, something telling me that I had to venture forth into the cave. I had this intense urge to explore inside, and the next thing I knew, I was moving closer. Everything went silent, and the only thing I could focus on was the cave, and the only thing I could hear was my heartbeat. I listened as it slowly rose in tempo. I was scared. I was sure that whatever was about to happen was not going to be good. A fear unlike anything I had ever felt before blanketed my existence. Having seemingly no control over my body intensified the fear, and it was as though I was experiencing some sort of sleep paralysis. Instead of seeing the dark creatures in the corner or sitting on my chest, however, the creatures were forcing me to approach where they lived and where they slept. One painfully slow step, followed by another, and another. And I remember, for a second, I accepted my fate. I accepted the fact that I was gonna die, and nothing, or no one, could save me. It was at that moment I was ripped back into reality by my friends. They grabbed a hold of my shoulders after calling out my name had no effect. "Are you alright?" Jesse asked. "I thought you didn't like caves." "I don't," I muttered, still shaken. It was all I could think of to say. "Well, if you want to explore it, let's at least do it during the day. It's cold and kind of scary out here," AJ added. "Trust me, I want to get home as much as you guys," I responded, immediately turning on my heels and walking up the trail ahead of them. We didn't say much the rest of the trip. I was obviously uneasy, and they could tell. But what they couldn't see, however, was how badly I was shaking. I speed-walked my way up to our house ahead of them, not stopping to explain what had just happened. And when I finally arrived home, I was relieved. The warmth and comfort of my home welcomed me as I walked through the front door, and it was as though any problems I had that had followed me home had vanished. Jesse and AJ entered shortly after I did. "Okay, who's ready to get whooped?" Jesse asked rhetorically. AJ and I laughed, and the rest of the night was just what I had hoped it would be. A fun night gaming with my friends. If only I had known that it would be the last time for a long time that I would get to experience that moment, I would have cherished it more. I was awoken by a familiar sound, my heartbeat, its rhythmic thumping ringing loudly in my ears, even after I was awake. It took me a few moments to realize that it wasn't actually my heartbeat I was hearing, but someone or something else's. The thumping continued to grow louder and louder, until it was so loud that I was forced to cover my ears. This didn't help though, and it felt like I would be forced to endure this ear-pounding thumping forever. But just when I thought it couldn't get any louder, it stopped, and in its place was silence. A ghost, quiet void is what was left, and in the next few moments, I would see them again. Two brilliantly bright red lights appeared off in the distance, and just as quickly as they had stopped, the heartbeats began again. This time, louder and faster, and in unison with the increasing size of the lights. I quickly realized that they were eyes of a large creature. And as the creature approached closer and closer, the heartbeats grew louder and faster until the creature was directly in front of me, and the heartbeats were tearing apart my eardrums. I couldn't see the creature still, despite the fact that it appeared to be directly in front of me. The next thing I knew, the creature's bright red eyes and heartbeats were replaced with car headlights and the sound of pedestrians and downtown construction. It was midday, and I was in town. The drastic change in brightness between this scene and the previous had caused my retinas to burn, and it took me a few moments for my eyes to adjust to the new scenery. But it wouldn't last long, because my eyes had to adjust yet again. I looked around to see an encroaching sheet of darkness blanket the town. Slowly it approached, but quickly it engulfed me. Looking up, I had discovered that the source of the darkness was a massive blimp, jet black and so big that it eclipsed the entire sky, effectively turning the midday to midnight. It took some time for my eyes to adjust again, but when they did, I noticed a large hatch on the bottom of the blimp open up, and a flood of things came pouring out. It was hard to make out what they were exactly. From far away, it looked like they were a flock of birds, but as one of them made their way towards me, I quickly realized that it was not a bird, but in fact a floating head, with arms sprouting from the sides where the ears should have been. Hundreds, if not thousands of those abominations were flooding the streets, and one of them was coming for me. And for a second time within 24 hours, I had given up and accepted my fate. And as it drew closer, I realized that I was not staring at a disembodied head anymore, but instead was staring at Allison. The room was blindingly bright, and the light from the window contoured Allison's body, giving her a beautiful glow. I was thankful for being awoken. I had never had nightmares before, or at least, even in my dreams that could be considered nightmares, I didn't feel fright or tension. I was just an observer. But that time, in that dream, it felt like I was actually experiencing it. It felt real. Allison was my girlfriend, by the way, and she had come by, along with Emily, Jesse's girlfriend, to get breakfast together. So I got up and got dressed, and went into the living room where everyone was waiting. "It's about time," AJ exclaimed. He was usually the one who woke up the earliest, so he had probably been waiting for a few hours at least. "Why didn't you guys wake me up earlier?" I responded, trying to defend myself. "It's okay, I only woke up 30 minutes ago myself," Jesse added. He usually slept the longest by far, so the fact that I slept longer than him concerned me. "I had a really strange dream, and I didn't really get much sleep," I added, purposely unspecific. "Strange dream?" Jesse asked, with a look similar to a dog turning its head at you in confusion. "You and me both." "Okay guys, I think we should probably leave now," Emily stated to the group. "I want to get there before it gets too crowded," and without word, everybody agreed, as we didn't want to be out for too long, and we went out to the car. The trip down to IHOP was fairly normal. I made sure to block my peripherals when passing the cave. Even though we were in a car, I was still uneasy about the whole situation that happened the night before. The rest of the trip went alright. Jesse occasionally saying something gross to Emily. Allison and I held hands, and AJ swiped his way through Tinder the whole way, hoping to one day find his soulmate. We arrived at IHOP and were promptly seated. Thankfully, it was fairly dead that morning. "Are you guys ready to order?" a pretty tall blonde with blue eyes asked, approaching our table. Everyone at the table immediately turned to AJ, giving him a suggestive glance. "What?" he muttered, not getting the hint. Everyone laughed, and we all placed our orders. It was then that Jesse brought up the dream again. "So what was your dream about, if you don't mind me asking?" "It's kinda hard to explain, but first I was in a dark void, and I saw a huge creature with red eyes. Then I was in town, and there was a huge blimp, and I saw a hatch on the bottom open up, and from the inside were flying heads?" Jesse yelled. "Yeah, did you have the same dream?" I asked. I'd never had the same dream twice, myself, so I remember thinking that the odds of us both having the same dream must have been impossibly coincidental. "I guess I did," he responded. "And so did I," AJ added. Now that really confused me. "So you're telling me all three of us had the same dream?" I asked. Now I wondered if they might be messing with me. "Aw, that's kind of cute that you all had the same dream," Allison said. "Don't you think it's a little strange?" I responded. I turned my head to look out the window in an attempt to recollect my thoughts, but something wasn't right. It was 11 in the morning, but it was totally dark outside. "Guys, why is it so dark outside?" "I think it's supposed to rain today," Jesse commented. "Probably just clouds." "Yeah, but this is like really dark." I moved my head closer to the window in order to get a better look at the sky. And it wasn't clouds, and just like in my dream the previous night, there hovered a massive black blimp. "I think your guys are going to want to see this." Jesse and AJ joined me at the window, and I could see their expressions shift. "It's the same as in my dream!" Jesse shouted. Everyone in the restaurant had gotten up to go look out the window as well. The citizens were funneling out onto the street to see what was going on. There were probably 200 people standing around, talking in muddled confusion. You could tell by their expressions that they were just as equally terrified as they were confused. Most people got out their phones and started recording. "I have a bad feeling about this," AJ exclaimed. We all did. The next thing that happened was a voice came over a loudspeaker projecting from the blimp. It filled the entire area, and even from inside the building, we could hear the voice clearly say, "Don't resist." Two words that, if taken at face value, meant nothing. Resist what? We would soon learn what those two words meant. Just as I had dreamt it the night before, a hatch on the bottom of the blimp opened up, and the same creatures would start pouring onto the streets, kidnapping pedestrians and dragging them up into the blimp. "Those are the floating heads from my dream!" Jesse shouted, pointing at the swarm. One man, standing just outside the restaurant, watched what I assumed to be his girlfriend get dragged away into the ship, their hands losing contact with each other for the last time as she was hauled away, and in retaliation, the man pulled out a gun and started firing at the creature. And it's as if time stood still for a few moments, as every creature in the immediate vicinity halted in their tracks and turned to face the man. The man's angry expression quickly changed to one of terror as he ran to the door of the IHOP and started pounding on the glass, yelling, demanding to be let in. The doors were locked, however, as the managers and employees had already fled to the back room to hide. The pounding continued, all the while tears streamed down his face. The next thing we knew, the congregate of creatures charged down and started devouring him, doing it so quickly that the man didn't have time to react, and the only noise released was a high-pitched scream that was quickly truncated. The creatures were so quick in devouring the man that there wasn't even any blood. He was just gone. This, of course, caused pandemonium in the streets, and even though the words earlier were clearly a warning, that didn't stop people from screaming and running away. We watched one after the other being devoured, and watched the select few that accepted their fate get carried off to the ship. "We gotta hide," AJ said, shattering the silence between us. "I don't think they know we're in here yet." So we all started heading back towards the back of the restaurant, and found a group of employees all huddled up in the break room. They moved over and made room for us. "What the fuck is going on out there?" the store manager cried. "We have no idea, but I think it's our best option to just hide for a while," I responded. "Maybe they'll leave." "All those people. Everybody is so helpless and terrified," Allison said. I held her in my arms in an attempt to calm her down. Jesse was holding Emily. There was silence for the next 30 minutes while we sat in the break room. There was nothing really to say. We just had to sit and wait. And so we did. We could hear screaming and the noises of the creatures, a deep-pitched gurgling, for what seemed like forever. But after 30 minutes passed, We stopped hearing anything, and there was an eerie silence. "I think it might be over," AJ said, "but I think we should stay in here for a bit longer, just in case." He was right. There was no reason risking it. But as soon as this thought formed in my mind, the roof of the IHOP was torn from its foundation, and over our heads loomed 6 of the creatures, searching for the last remaining people left in the city. We all knew what we had to do, and stood up in fear, not knowing if we were to be eaten or taken. The creatures swooped down, picking up 4 employees, along with Allison and Emily. I felt terrible for them. I could see the fear in their eyes as they were dragged away. I wanted to be with her, but there was nothing we could do. We just had to wait for the last 3 creatures to come back and take us as well, and hopefully we could find them once we were inside. Before long, 3 more creatures started heading towards us, fast. But just before they could reach us, a large burst of bright red and orange flame scorched the creatures, the heat from the flames melting everything in its path. The creatures turned to ash instantly. I looked over to see where the flames had come from and saw a massive red dragon with blindingly bright red eyes, the same lights I had seen in my dream. The dragon landed in the street in front of the restaurant, his massive tail crushing the rest of the IHOP, and there he stood, directly in front of us. The dragon's head whipped around and stared at us, and somehow, we knew to climb on. His scales were hard as diamonds, and equally as shiny. We all started to make our way towards the dragon, when I stopped them. "What about Allison and Emily? We can't just leave them up there." And the next few moments, we all came to an agreement to go after them. Jesse looked up at the dragon and said, "We're sorry, we can't go with you, Mr. Dragon. Our friends are up there, and we need to get them back." The dragon said nothing, and just stared. The next thing I knew, we were lying in a cold, dark place. I turned my head over to see Jesse and AJ lying next to me, awake and staring back at me. I could barely make out their figures in the darkness. "Where are we?" I asked them, knowing they knew just as much as I did. "No idea, but this floor is not comfortable," AJ responded from the darkness. "I wish we could see something," Jesse added, and as if on command, a row of flames wrapped around us, lighting up torches that rested along the circumference of the wall. It appeared to be a cave, and with this new light came a new understanding, as lying in front of us was the massive red dragon, his eyes as bright as ever, but his wing appeared to be injured. The dragon just laid there and stared at us. "Thank you for saving us," I muttered, attempting to sound appreciative, but what came out was more fear. After no response, I looked over at Jesse and AJ, giving them suggestive hints that they should thank him as well, and almost comically, they did. "Thank you, Mr. Dragon." A few moments passed, and the dragon's head lurched forward and slammed onto the ground, causing a few rocks from the walls to come tumbling down to our feet, and for a second, I thought the dragon was going to eat us. But he didn't. The massive head was within arm's reach, and radiated a warm wave of heat, similar to that of a campfire, though more gentle and calming. It felt like energy was being directly channeled into my body from it, and before I had a chance to notice, one of the dragon's whiskers had been making its way up towards my face. I glanced over at Jesse and AJ and saw that there were also whiskers rising up to them too. And all at once, the whiskers touched our foreheads, and a bright orange light formed around us. And in that same moment, all the information we needed to know was instantly transmitted to us, and any question we currently had was answered, and the dragon went to sleep. My friends and I said nothing, as we knew what we had to do, and left the cave towards the opening behind the dragon, and after half an hour of traversing the cave, we came to an exit, a familiar mountain trail nearby our home. Still saying nothing, we made our way home and got ready for the journey that was to come. We all sat down in the living room to finally discuss what had happened. "So basically, the people in the blimp are being controlled by evil dragons and are being forced to capture and kill humans in order for dragons to keep them as slaves?" AJ stated. "Right, but not all dragons are bad. Just most, I guess," Jesse added. "And we're supposed to go to the Dragon's King, the good Dragon's King that is, and he can give us the power we need to defeat the bad dragons?" I added. "It's literally some cheesy movie plot." My friends laughed. But this would turn out to be much different than some cheesy movie plot, and despite the magical sense of adventure we had gotten at the time, things quickly would go in an unexpected way. And for the next hour, we packed backpacks full of supplies for our trip, as it would be a long one. And since our car was destroyed in the chaos in the city, we had to walk. The blimp was supposedly searching for us, so we didn't have much time and had to be extra careful. We packed our bags with food from the night before, as well as some extras we had lying around the house. Lots of water, phone chargers, all the necessities. It wasn't a post-apocalyptic wasteland after all. We were sure to come across some other cities and towns on our way there. Along with some change of clothes and a few other accessories, we were ready, and we were on our way. We set off down the mountain trail on the other side of the mountain, and after a good walk, we ended up in the forests near our home. Unlike the short, quick trip through the woods on the other side of the mountain, this was much more massive, and even from the top of the mountain, the edge of the forest was nowhere to be seen. So we started walking, because if we wanted answers to this, we would have to make our way to the Dragon's King. And for about an hour, we were silent. I think we were still trying to comprehend exactly what was going on, and even though we knew what we had to do, we still were unsure of why or how. After a full day's trip through the woods, it started to get dark. Thankfully, we could see the edge of the woods, and once we came through, we were met with a large valley. We were standing at the edge of a cliff, covered in grass and flowers, and above us, a beautiful night sky full of stars, shining their light on our soon-to-be campsite. "I think we should set up camp here for the night," AJ said, and really, sleeping was all we wanted to do. After all we had been through, it was all we could think about. We haphazardly set up the tent and climbed inside, and for a few moments, it felt like home again. "How are you guys taking all of this?" Jesse asked concernedly. "Well, it's a lot to take in for sure," I responded. "But even though this situation is completely fucked up, I am a little bit excited, you know? Like, this is something that nobody has ever done before. It's kind of adventurous." "Yeah, but I have a bad feeling. A feeling like this is not going to go the way we think it will," AJ added. "Yeah, but I think we'll be fine. Everything happens for a reason, you know. Maybe we were meant to do this," Jesse said. Little did we know what was about to happen. It took a while to fall asleep, and it was the first night that I realized how much I missed Allison. I found it incredibly difficult to fall asleep without her in my arms, but I eventually did. It wasn't for long though, as when I finally awoke, it was still dark outside. I looked over at Jesse and AJ, and saw that they were also awake. "Do you guys know what time it is?" I asked them. "Not time to wake up yet," AJ muttered. Something fell off, so I shuffled around in my backpack to look for my phone. I held the power button for a few moments to turn it on. We kept our phones off to conserve battery, and when the bright LED screen displayed my lock screen, the time read 11:45 a.m.